The early development of bilingualism. There are various routes to bilingualism and multilingualism, some from birth, others much later. Such bilingual routes include acquiring two languages early on in the home, acquiring a second language in the street, in the wider community, in the nursery school, elementary or high school, and after childhood, learning a second or foreign language in adult language classes and courses or by informal interaction with others. Childhood bilingualism. More children worldwide grow up to become bilinguals or multilinguals rather than monolinguals. Some children become bilinguals almost effortlessly from birth. Others learn a language in school or later as adults. Simultaneous childhood bilingualism refers to a child acquiring two languages at the same time from birth, sometimes called infant bilingualism, bilingual acquisition, and bilingual first language acquisition. An example of sequential bilingualism is when a child learns one language in the home, then goes to a nursery or elementary school and learns a second language. For these emergent bilinguals, there are no exact boundaries between simultaneous and sequential bilingualism, although the age of acquisition is often used as a marker. In contrast, second language classes for children and adults usually foster bilingualism through direct instruction. This leads to a distinction between informal language acquisition and more formal language learning. However, the boundary between acquisition and learning is not distinct. Parents, members of the public, and politicians sometimes buy into the false belief that acquiring two languages from birth is detrimental to a child's language growth. On the contrary, babies appear biologically ready to acquire, store, and differentiate two or more languages from birth onwards. Infant bilingualism is normal and natural, with evidence that is typically beneficial in many ways cognitively, culturally, communicatively, for higher curriculum achievement, and to increase the chances of employment and promotion. Differentiation between two languages in the infant. Fetal stage. Memory for language sounds begins to operate. The bilingual acquisition appears to start before birth. Babbling stage. Maneva and Guinness found that infants in the babbling stage, around 10 to 12 months of age, exposed to two languages from birth, have a tendency to babble in their strong language and demonstrate language-specific babbling features of each language. The brains of infants raised in bilingual Spanish-English homes demonstrates a longer period of being open and flexible to different languages in comparison with infants raised in monolingual households. 1 to 2 years. By age 2, bilingual children know which language to speak, to whom, and in what situation. Opol. This term refers to one parent, one language. And when parents can potentially use more than one language with their children, there is language choice in raising their children. This choice has been referred to as private language planning or family language policy. Where parents have the ability to speak both languages to the children, there may be a latent understanding of sometimes a conscious strategy about which language to use with the child from birth upwards. However, Pillar 2002 found that many couples do not make a conscious decision about which language or languages to use in the home. 4 years. The bilingual speaker may start using some translanguaging in various domains depending on various factors, such as the listeners, familiarity with those people, atmosphere of the setting, and perceived linguistic skills of the listeners. For example, a bilingual child could speak strictly in one language in school, but during interactions with their friends, they may switch to another language that all the participants understand. They already possess awareness of the changes in code that they can do. They may even be able to code switch single words or even complete utterances. Parents' attitudes to languages, their preferred identity, and an overall cost benefit analysis are influential in their choices. Some bilingual parents choose to use just one of their languages with the child for varied reasons. A mother and father, for example, may just use Spanish or only English with the child. Parents make language choices by conscious, subconscious, and spontaneous decisions that are both general and local. Parental choice of family languages relates to desired language, cultural, and gender identity. Types of early childhood bilingualism. This is the Opole approach, and it is commonly viewed as a highly successful strategy. However, it tends to imply incorrectly that it is only the parents that influence language acquisition. Community influences are also important, for example, preschool, extended family, mass media, internet, etc. In this type, the central idea is that the child acquires one language in the home and a different language outside the home, formally or informally. Mixed language. The parents speak both languages to the child. Translanguaging is acceptable in the home and in the neighborhood. However, some domains, such as school and official instances, may expect separation of language code. The community may have a dominant language or not. Delayed introduction of the second language, where the neighborhood, community, and school language is a higher status and dominant language, parents may delay exposure to that dominant language. Parents may exclusively speak Spanish in the home until the child is 2 or 3 years of age. Then add English. The tactic is to ensure a strong foundation in a heritage language before the dominant language outside the home becomes pervasive. Limitations. Type 1 is associated particularly with elite and middle class families. Type 3 and 4 are often found among relatively economically disadvantaged heritage language groups, such as immigrants and working class families. Most case studies of bilingual children have been based on two-parent families. This has happened probably more by accident than design. This implies that one parent family has little or no chance of raising a child bilingually. This is not true. The children may not have one parent, but still they have relatives in the community to support them. Code switching. This term refers to any switches between languages that occur within or across sentences during the same conversation or discourse. Language interference happens when speakers do not have native command of a second language and in some cases are tempted to use elements from their native language. This is sometimes regarded as a negative term, revealing a monolingual perspective and suggesting that there is a problem with a bilingual speaker. Switching and translanguaging may be less acceptable for political, social, or cultural reasons. Some monolinguals have negative attitudes to code switching and translanguaging, believing that it shows a communication deficit or a lack of mastery of both languages. Roles of code switching. Emphasis. Emphasize a particular point in a conversation. For example, don't run away. Escúchame. Substitution. If one does not know a phrase or word in one language, one may use a word from another language. Example, necesito las pliers para doblar este cable. Concepts without equivalences. Specific jargon in disciplines is expressed in the original language most of the time. Revisemos el concepto de flipped classroom. Problem solving. Having solved a problem in one language may help to rethink it or rephrase it in another language. Reinforcement. Code switching may be used to reinforce a request. A bilingual parent may say to a misbehaved child in Spanish, párale, then switch back to English. Clarification, repetition of a phrase in another language. A mother may command her child to do her assignment first in English and then in Spanish. Do your homework. Haz tu tarea. Identity. Code switching and translanguaging may be used to shorten social distance and communicate friendship. Report speech. A speaker may report a conversation in the original language that it happened. Two people may be speaking English together, but report some information in Spanish. I failed my Spanish class. I asked for clarification and the professor told me que mis proyectos eran un asco y por eso no pasé. Interjections. A person attempting to break into a conversation may introduce a different language. For example, two students speaking in English, a third person comes in and says, ¿Dónde vamos a ir después de la clase? Ease tension and or inject humor. Imagine a meeting, everyone speaks English and many understand Spanish. It is late and no one has had lunch yet. Suddenly, someone says in Spanish, ¿Quién fue el que dijo que iba a haber carnitas? This phrase might break the tension and provoke some laughter. Change of attitude or relationship. For example, in the United States, a Mexican customer in a store notices that the cashier speaks Spanish. The customer may start a friendly conversation in Spanish with the employee and at the end ask for a discount. The cashier may switch back to the majority language to deny such proposal. Exclusion. When traveling in a subway, two people speaking English may switch to their minority language to talk about private matters. Change in topic. A speaker may use English to discuss school subjects with their mother, but Spanish to tell her about how her day was. Imitation. In many cases, children are just copying the code switching and translanguaging around them. If a parent always says, let's go to the mercado, the child may start using this form of speech. Language minority students can be important language brokers between the home and the school. Also, when there are visitors to the house, such as sellers and traders, religious persuasionists, and local officials, a parent may call a child to the door to help translate what is being said. Disadvantages. First, children may find an exact translation difficult to achieve as their language is still developing. Second, children may be hearing information such as medical troubles, financial problems, marital issues, arguments, and conflicts that are the preserve of adults rather than children. Third, there can be stress, fear, and uncertainty for the child in providing an accurate and diplomatic interpretation. Despite the disadvantages, language brokering may also result in positive outcomes for children and their families. For example, self-esteem. Children earn parental praise and status within the family, leading to gains in self-esteem. Unity. Children and parents learn to trust and rely on each other, leading to greater feelings of family bonding. And empathy. Children learn to negotiate between two different social and cultural worlds while trying to understand both and leading to greater feelings of empathy. We have come to the end of the presentation. Up to this point, we can conclude that bilingualism is a complex phenomenon, but a very interesting one. I am going to leave some questions for you so we can have a nice discussion in the forum. Thanks for your attention.